All right, now talking about research on human attachment. So we talked about Harlow's monkey studies and some researchers who were inspired to apply these sorts of ideas to humans. They included Bowlby and one of Bowlby's students, Mary Ainsworth. Now I'm going to focus on Ainsworth, and in particular I'm going to focus on a laboratory procedure that she developed. A procedure for observing and assessing and classifying types of attachment. And so this procedure was called the strange situation. In the strange situation procedure, you would have a caregiver and an infant. They would come to the laboratory, the clinic, some sort of a controlled environment. And they would go into a room that had toys, like a playroom. And there's also, at one point, they meet a stranger. All right, do human young ones like strangers? If you don't know already, they do not. In the later part of the first year, when you've got your, 7 to 9 month olds approximately, I'm just giving an approximate age, it is very normative. It is typical. It is expected that infants will start to exhibit something called stranger wariness or stranger anxiety. Even if, like at 3 months old, they're smiling at all people, they get to this age, and we think evidence is it's because of changes in the brain. Their brain changes, and then they're like, I don't like strangers. I don't know you. So even friendly people, like they might go to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician is really friendly and warm, and they're like, I don't know you. They will show fear. They will show fear of that stranger. All right, so you expect children to show some stranger anxiety or stranger wariness. Other behavior that is observed during the strange situation, at one point, the caregiver is instructed to leave, all right? And they want to see how that child reacts to separation, and then when the caregiver comes back, they want to see how they react to reunion, to separation and reunion. They also want to see if they explore the toys while they're in the room. All right, all of these sorts of things lead us to 4 categories of attachment, 4 classifications of attachment. The first is known as secure attachment. And in the United States, this is the most common pattern. Not necessarily true, or not to the same extent in other cultures, in other countries, but very common style in the United States. And so with secure attachment, when given the opportunity to explore the playroom and explore the toys, they confidently and securely explore that room. They explore those toys. They will check in with the caregiver. They will use them as what we call a secure base. And they'll be like, hey, how you doing? You still over there? All right, I'm playing with toys. This is okay, I'm playing with toys, right? They will confidently explore the area. They do have a reaction to separation. When the caregiver leaves, they do show distress. Not like over the top, but they show distress. They prefer to have the caregiver there. When the caregiver returns, though, they are quickly soothed and comforted, and they're ready to go back to playing and having fun. All right, and so with secure attachment, they are able to explore. They don't like separation, but they're easily soothed upon reunion. And sometimes I'll have students say, well, that's not very secure. If they were truly secure, they would not be upset when their caregiver leaves. They would be independent. Well, that actually would be more consistent with a different attachment style known as avoidant attachment. And sometimes it's given a longer name. Let me check the book here. Yeah, okay, so sometimes people call it anxious avoidant attachment, and the textbook does. All right, a lot of times people just lop that anxious off, and they'll just say avoidant attachment. All right, so anxious avoidant attachment, they don't really show that strong preference for the caregiver. They don't have a strong reaction to the caregiver leaving. It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, they left, no big deal. And so they're not particularly distressed when the mother leaves. And they ignore their mothers when they come back. It's not no big reaction to separation and reunion. All right, and that is not so common in the United States, but you do have some infants that exhibit this avoidant attachment. Now, another type of anxious attachment is anxious, ambivalent, resistant attachment. That's a mouthful, right? I will see it just called resistant or just called ambivalent, but anxious, ambivalent, resistant attachment. All right, they don't explore the room. They are kind of clingy with the caregiver. They don't explore the room freely. They are very upset at separation, and they are not at all easily soothed or comforted on reunion. They are very upset to be separated from their caregiver. Yeah, difficult to soothe, even with the caregiver's return. By the way, the textbook does use the word mothers. Not all caregivers are mothers. All right, you can do the strained situation with fathers, with non-binary parents, or like grandparents who are raising the child. Attachment figures don't have to be mothers. All right, now I said we have four. We have four categories. There is a fourth that was added later. All right, so the first three, those were like the original, but eventually we added a fourth category called disorganized. Disorganized, disoriented attachment. They show inconsistent behavior. Like sometimes they seem to like the caregiver, other times they're kind of hostile towards the caregiver. They don't have consistent behavior towards the caregiver. That's the least common in samples typically. Usually it's like maybe 5% of the sample will show disorganized, disoriented attachment. So that one was the one that was added last. So with all of these attachment styles, you can label and say, okay, that child, they're exhibiting this type of attachment. And some studies have tried to determine, like, are these attachment styles predictive of later behavior? We do have some limitations to this type of approach. One is that not all children are consistent in their attachment styles. Sometimes they'll exhibit one attachment style at one time and a different one at another time. Another thing is that in the beginning, we very much assumed that attachment style was a reflection of the parent in some way. Like, okay, how does a child end up with this attachment style? It must be because of how the parent has treated them. With more research, we actually know that the child very much contributes to the attachment pattern too, particularly the child's temperament. The next video will be about temperament.